Welcome back. The G20 Summit meeting in the national capital is approaching fast. Remember, this two-day event on September 9 and 10 marks the culmination of a whole year's build-up and several meetings under the G20 banner with India as its president. The B20 Summit, the one focusing on business, kicked off today in the national capital with a theme of RAISE: responsible, accelerated, innovative, sustainable and equitable businesses. Over the next 10 days, a whole host of top global leaders will be arriving in the national capital, headlined by none other than US President Joe Biden, who has confirmed his presence. The G20, remember, is an inter-government forum comprising of 19 countries and the European Union. It works to address major issues related to the global economy, such as international financial stability, climate change mitigation, and sustainable development. First up, take a look at the top big leaders from across the world that will be in the national capital for this summit. As I mentioned, Joe Biden, the US president, is the top name headlining this event. Justin Trudeau, Canadian president, is also expected. Anthony Albanese, Australian Prime Minister, will be in town. We are expecting, and this is going to be a big one to watch out for, Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, as well. Emmanuel Macron, the French president. We're also expecting Rishi Sunak, of course, the Prime Minister of UK of Indian descent. Mohammed bin Salman, who's the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, is expected in town. Mr. Erdogan, the Turkish president. And we have Fumio Kishida, the Japanese Prime Minister. A lot of these leaders, the Prime Minister has already been meeting on various other forums. The Indonesian President Widodo is also expected to be in town. Remember, Kremlin has said that Russian President Vladimir Putin will not be attending the summit in person. They've said their main emphasis for them right now is a special military operation that is ongoing in Ukraine. Now, the G20 is a massive occasion for India, and in many ways, the timing couldn't have been better for the country. It positions India as a driving force of unity, especially with the message of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, the world is one family. It showcases India's stability during an economic crisis. Today, India is the brightest global spot on the economic front. It also solidifies India's position as a mediator with world powers. More and more countries are using India's heft in figuring out certain complex equations. It is also an opportunity to take the lead in tackling climate crisis. Remember, India is performing much better than most countries, developing or developed, in meeting the climate goals that have been set for the world. And this forum acts as a bridge between the superpowers and the developing countries. And between them, they control most of the economy of the world. And therefore, India will also look to get as much support and more as possible during these 2 days. I'm joined by none other than President, US-India Business Council, and also Senior Vice President, US Chamber of Commerce, Atul Keshap, is joining us, who has served as Charge d'Affaires of the US mission in India. The G20 with India as the president. Mr. Keshap, you know it's a big occasion for us. President Biden is coming. Leaders from across the world, global community are coming. How do you see this moment for India?
Shivani, thank you for having me. Look, this is India's golden moment. India will shine on the world stage. The leaders of the top 20 economies will come here. President Biden is coming here. India's had a magnificent, magical moment with the Chandrayaan-3 landing on the south pole of the moon.
Yes.
An incredibly difficult feat to achieve. A victory for all of India and all of humanity. What ISRO has done, I think, kind of hammers the ball out of the park on the notion that India's moment has come, and that this is a golden time for Indians to aspire for the greatest amount of national economic growth and happiness and prosperity and development as India rises to become a much, much bigger economy and to help set the standards and the rules for the world of the 21st century.
The G20, of course, focuses a lot on the politics, diplomacy, because a lot of the global leaders will be there on the same forum. But a lot of the work actually gets done behind the scenes, things like you do. So give me a sense of business-wise, trade, investment, collaboration-wise, what is it that you're focusing on while being in the national capital?
So that's a great question. Look, I represent a business council of over 200 world-class companies, American and Indian. And if you look at, for instance, the joint statement set by President Biden and Prime Minister Modi after the state visit, There are 58 paragraphs in there. And these paragraphs reflect the very bold aspirations of the two governments for where they see U.S. and Indian collaboration in kind of ensuring the happiness, freedom, and prosperity of our people and of the entire world. But in a lot of that, business plays a really key role in defense, in pharmaceuticals and life sciences, in future tech and deep tech, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, in cybersecurity, in space exploration. Our companies increasingly are collaborating in many ways that will help define how much government can achieve. So my job as the head of a trade association is to try to find ways that we can smooth out the path of U.S.-India business-to-business collaboration in a way that we can help the governments achieve these very, very bold goals. Because if India and America succeed, it's going to be good for the entire planet.
Yes, and we remember when the Prime Minister was in US on that trip, which has really shifted the Indo-US ties to a new level. A lot of the focus was on business. You had business leaders around the two world leaders. And of course, all of that needs to be taken forward. You spoke about the Chandrayaan. Space tech is growing. Is there anything we can expect or look forward to as far as companies or collaborations are concerned in this field?
So you have seen how there has been an enormous growth in private sector space explorations, near Earth, remote sensing, and so many other applications besides in the United States since we deregulated the space sector. And so you've got companies that are launching rockets, they're supplying the space station, they're putting astronauts up. And I think that kind of growth is really unlocking the potential of space. So India's massive technological achievement in landing a rover on the moon is just another step in the U.S.-India space odyssey, because we've worked together on moon missions, we've worked together on Mars missions. Our ISRO and our NASA and your ISRO work very well together. And so I think there's plenty of room not only for the governments to work on space, but frankly for our private sectors. At USIBC, we're very proud that we host regular meetings of our space working group that brings American and Indian companies together to try to ensure the safety and peaceful use of space for the benefit of everybody.
You know, India is also moving in that direction, allowing private participation in space. So let's see where that goes. But, you know, when it comes to just the position that India enjoys today or wants to enjoy over the next 2 decades or so, there are a lot of challenges that are also cropping up for India. As its economy grows, as its heft grows in global diplomacy, there are new challenges emerging. For example, we just saw, you know, the Indian Prime Minister meet the Chinese president yesterday, and you know about the LSE standoff that has been ongoing. The question I really want to ask is, how much support can India expect from global powers, from the world, in facing those challenges?
I think the world is deeply invested in seeing India's rise to become a prosperous, happy nation. India is already well regarded in world affairs as a country that upholds international order and international peace and security. It is a responsible stakeholder. It is a peaceful nation. It takes care of its neighbors and its friends. It treats others with equality and compassion. It is greatly generous around the world in helping other people. And so an even bigger, even stronger, even more wealthy India is going to bring even more of that goodness to the global scene. So this is where I would appeal to Indian friends that in that golden moment of building this country up to a 10 and then 20 and $30 trillion economy, I would suggest that the world is deeply invested, as American companies already are, in India. They want to see that growth happen. To the extent that the process can be inclusive, there can be stakeholder input in regulations, there can be predictability in regulations. That will greatly unlock and unleash even more investment that will result in even more jobs and even more prosperity for India. And frankly, what's good for India is good for America and good for the world. So that kind of predictability is the most important thing for global capital. Capital seeks safe destinations. India is, of course, very geopolitically safe. It's a wonderful civilization, a great democracy. A little more regulatory predictability will, I think, really unleash a lot more investment.
On that note, Atul Keshap, I do thank you for your time. I hope you enjoy your time in the national capital, and it builds up perfectly to the G20 summit when Joe Biden will be here as well. On that note, time for me to take